So Abe, I don't remember when the last time we spoke with you was, but as you know, we've been working on the community challenge grant approach for over a year now, and we're ready this year to submit our presentation for consideration, and it's sparked and motivated, as you know, by the need to have the beautiful median for everybody, but also we've become extremely aware of the density increase that is going to be taking place in our neighborhood over the next few years as the Potrero Annex project increases residences from 600, which is what they are now, to 1,700 new homes for for families. So that's a lot of increased density in our direct neighborhood, because that's like a block away from our house. So this project, although the community challenge grant is really geared towards beautification and creating green spaces for everyone to enjoy, and that's a huge part of our project. We also just wanted to highlight that because of the increased density of both foot traffic, cars, parking, all of that, our project wanted to take all of that into account so that at every step of our multi-phase project, we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, we're looking ahead at the bigger picture and having each stage work harmoniously together to get us to the goal at the end of the multi-phase project. So here it is. I'm gonna, without further ado, start. And again, this is our CCG presentation. So please jump in if you have any questions.
Can I just insert one thing for Abe? We have partnered with Parks Alliance, with Thomas at Parks Alliance. And it really was last year that it came crashing down upon us that there were so much infrastructure issues with our site that they really told us to put a pause on last year's application because we had included way too much infrastructure. And so that's really kind of brought to focus, now we have a holistic plan, but I wanted to just put that in there, that this, Thomas was the one that said, put a pause on things until this year. So here, this is the solution. Yeah.
Okay. So we can sort of skip through a lot of this stuff. We've organized as a community group. We're the Haro Street Community Project, which is the purpose is to join together as a community to improve, enhance, and beautify the 1300 block of Haro Street, creating a connected and unified neighborhood green space for all the residents of the southern slope of Potrero and beyond. So this is our mission statement for the grant. And the background, which you already know, so we'll just zip through it. We came together, we've been doing this for years. We really pulled together during COVID, thanks to shelter in place and the need to get through difficult times. So here's our historic views, which are pretty cool. These are from 1941. And the same views today. So there's a lot of history here. As you know, we've been doing work days with our community, and these are some photographs from one of our community days. So our holistic vision, multi-phase project, in collaboration with our steering committee comprised, well, you know all of that. We've worked with Terrain Studios to develop a multi-phase master plan. Each of these 4 phases is independent and autonomous in scope and addresses key improvement requirements. All 4 phases are in service of a holistic goal of creating a seamless, interconnected green belt that serves the larger neighborhood, fostering a more beautiful and functional pedestrian-friendly community. Phase 1 is what we are applying for the Community Challenge Grant for, and it addresses erosion and drainage issues while significantly enhancing the beauty and sustainability of the hillside, which also connects Upper and Lower Haro with new stone face steps and a gravel path. Elements include drainage, retaining structure, decorative gravel, low flow irrigation, initial drought tolerant planting, and landscaping. And then the other phases, which we would be applying for next year, phase 2 anyways, continues to improve the median and is also a community challenge grant. Phase 3 and 4 address more infrastructure issues, and we'll have to work with the Department of Public Works on that. Ultimately, the goal is to complete this green belt walking pedestrian path, and also at the same time makes Upper and Lower Haro's accepted streets, and sort of fosters this beautiful entrance to the Star King open space. So these are beautiful words, but let's look at pictures. So here is the potential green belt that we have here on Potrero Hill. And you know, I've done this walk. I know that in the new Potrero Annex, which is this area here, they're going to be building in quite a lot of green spaces for pedestrian walking, especially with the increased density and, you know, the new times fostered by COVID. Those sorts of what are they called? They're amenities. I mean, it shouldn't be an amenity. It should just be a natural need that we all have to walk and to exercise our bodies. Anyways, these are being more and more appreciated, I think. So, so there's going to be a lot of connected green spaces in the Potrero Annex, according to their website. And I just wanted to highlight the current walking path that I like to do, which starts, you know, along 25th Street. We go through our beautiful project site, which is of course the 1300 block of Haro, and then into the Star King open space and over to Carolina, down past the reservoir and down the steps to the Friendship Garden. And then behind the Potrero Hill Recreation Center, there's actually a beautiful wilderness path that you can walk that carries you all the way around back to 25th Street. So it's this beautiful circular walking path, which we want to make even more functional with our project.
And safe, I would add.
Yeah. So here's an overview of the master plan. You can see Terrain Studios created this beautiful diagram of what we're suggesting, which ultimately over the course of several years would make Upper and Lower Haro both accepted streets by dealing with the width issue, the sidewalk issue, and of course the ramp, which is extremely unsafe and narrowing by the day, especially now that the city has made Lower Haro a one-way street. So traffic is being forced on Upper Haro, which is further degrading the roads. And the ramp is sort of visible in the background here. So Terrain's vision was to do what was originally planned in the city planning, which is to carry it through to 24th Street. So that was the vision that we came up with after a year of research and brainstorming. But you know, these are all 4 phases of the plan. For phase 1, which is what we're applying for this year, we have in yellow the Lower Haro beautification project, which essentially involves what we're going to talk about what it involves. But and then the second phase next year would be further terracing and planting, and then phase 3 would deal with the lower street and phase 4 would deal with the upper street. So phase 1, the components are putting in gabions to retain the hillside and provide a wall that will hold back the soil from falling into the street, which makes the street narrower. But it's a wall that allows water to permeate through to encourage proper drainage. Also, the steps would be started so that we can access the different levels of the street and create a beautiful walking path. So those are some of the issues that are addressed by phase 1, is dealing with the landscaping, dealing with the irrigation, which I don't think we talk enough about in this presentation, because our intention is to apply for the PUC irrigation grant. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But that's a major part to this, because we can't keep any of these plants alive, and the plants die and the soil erodes, and then our street gets narrower and narrower, and it's just unsafe. So these are some of the issues that are going to be addressed by phase 1, which we are hoping to get the community challenge grant for this year. You can see these are just some highlighted pictures of why we need the gabion wall, because there's this continuous erosion of the slope. And if we ever do get rain again, it makes for a pretty difficult street to drive on when you have this mud that covers half of it.
Quick question on that photo, sorry.
Yeah.
If you go back to the photo on the left, if you had that gabion, you kind of got rid of some of the erosion, some of the dirt. Under that dirt, is that asphalt or concrete, or is some of that just dirt and hasn't been paved?
So the really interesting thing is that when the street was paved decades ago, there is more of the street underneath this soil flow. And we have, just out of curiosity's sake, we've dug it back. And so there's definitely a road lip. And our intention with the gabion is we're going to go back into the hillside. So where this board is in this photograph, that's about where the gabion would actually start. And then at the base of the gabion, there would be about 12 inches of gravel drainage, and then the road would start, because we need to have the drainage so that the water is diverted and doesn't just flow over the road. So
that's great though, too. You'd have more roadway, and especially looking at the phase 3 for the lower, I think that's definitely helpful.
Yeah, terrain was very clear that we wanted to hit the 12 feet for transit. Like keeping in mind that to be accepted, you need 12 feet for cars to pass through. We currently don't have that. So this would solve that.
And is terrain working at least partially with Public Works to make sure that as the designs are happening, they're kind of lockstep with what Public Works would be looking for years down the road for some type of interceptance?
We're hoping. Okay. I mean, we're in the process of working with Ramses right now to try to get the Department of Public Health, of Public Works, excuse me, to be on board. We're hoping. Ramses has seen this presentation, and they're working on their letter of support, because right now that's what we need from as many sources as possible. Letters of support stating that they're excited about this project. So I'm hoping that means that they will be working with us.
Additionally, I would say our vision is to present this to Shaman at some point, and Scott, who's the principal, the founder of Terrain Studios, would be on that call and could, he could speak to his plan better than we can.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So a few of the features, we've got this beautiful serpentine rock that outcrops from the hillside all over the place here. And we've taken that into consideration in our design so that these features will be accentuated and not, you know, lost. And the overall vision is for something more like this, where we have a safer road and safer pedestrian and bicycle traffic, where everybody can enjoy the beautiful green space that we are lucky enough to have. And there's fewer and fewer green spaces in San Francisco, and this, you know, we should bring it to its potential so that we can all enjoy it. So the benefit to the gabion, in addition to allowing water to permeate it, you can also plant in it. So it, you know, after a couple of years, it's going to look so beautiful. So this is a mock-up simulation that Terrain provided of what we're, you know, potentially looking at. Safer, wider streets, new planting and access path, existing curb and sidewalk would remain. So we went through a lot of iterations of this project, and in a few of them, we were taking away parking spaces, and, you know, we pretty much came to the conclusion that we don't want to take anything away from our neighbors, and we don't want to give anything up. We just want more. So this project, as it is right now, doesn't take away. It just, you know, gives. And that's one of the things we're really proud of. So.
And in this rendering, I'm just looking, so you're keeping the parking and then you're widening the road. Does that widen it to the extent that it would allow for two-way traffic, or is it still a bit narrow because of the parking?
No, it would definitely remain a one-way street, because we were told that it would be, you know, almost impossible to reverse that now that it's been set in motion, even though nobody was consulted on the block. But, you know, we're just going to accept that it's a one-way street, and it's a lot easier to get a one-way street that's narrow accepted than a two-way, right? So sticking to the rules of it being a one-way street, it's easier to widen. It takes up less, you know, of the median. So we would have it be, you know,
12 feet for transit, 8 feet for parked cars, 4 feet for pedestrian. And I know, and Terrain's been very clear about that. Like that's what we have to hit to become accepted. So they're very, yeah. So this hits that.
Great.
And I think there's some diagrams later on that sort of go more into detail of that specific issue. So here's our budget, taking into account the CCG grant and the fact that we have to match 40%, which is scary. The budget is at 139,000 just to do this. Of course, the CCG grant only allows a certain amount towards construction costs. So that's also something that we took into account during the division of phasing. In some ways, it would be more economical to do the gabions all at once, including on the upper street and in the center, but we just can't make the numbers look right while still qualifying for these grants. So that's why we've broken it up the way that we have. Again, this is our presentation for the CCG, so it's in that format, but we can just sort of jump ahead. Get my cat off the counter again. There we go. Yeah, you don't have to. Okay, so phase 2 is interesting. Again, dealing with phase 2, we didn't want to just talk about phase 1 in our proposal. We want them to have an idea of everything that's coming down the pike so that they can see how considered, you know, this whole development has been. And phase 2 is also a project that we would be applying for a CCG for, which further beautifies the hillside and finishes the stairs, you know, that makes it all the way through, while also dealing with the upper Haro erosion issue and the garbage issue. Here's a rendering. Now, originally, when we started working with terrain, they had this beautiful concept of using these cobblestones, because 24th Street and 24th and Haro is one of the last cobblestone streets in San Francisco, and it's just beautiful. So in their original plan, they had included the cobblestones, but because of our budgetary requirements, we had to kind of nix that aesthetically pleasing but very expensive part of the project. But there's no reason to say that we can't do that down the line if suddenly we somehow had lots of money. So but
street repair becomes easier with pavers because you just pick them up and yeah.
Right, these cobblestones are actually pavers, yes, and the street would be easier to repair and to maintain with the pavers because you just remove them. But in any case, the rendering of Upper Haro, we would have a short retaining wall, gabion wall, all along this edge, as well as a 12-foot wide, well, the street would be wide enough to be accepted, and we would have to install sidewalks in order to be an accepted street on Upper Haro. So the gabion wall would hold back the slope, and we would further these. So here's our gabion wall up at the top. As you see, it's really only at the worst of the area. It's where the street is really collapsing, and the idea is that the gabion would backfilling underneath the road, and then installing the gabion, it would help to prevent that erosion. And we would deal with the mid-level gabions as well, which terraces the hillside to make it more beautiful and more accessible for plantings and the like. Sorry, where is it? And we would install a couple of pedestrian bollards to keep people coming up the steps from being hit and to prevent cars from parking right here and blocking it. So that's an important part of phase 2 is safety. So safety for our community. So this is the budget for phase 2, which encompasses the purple areas. And keeping into account the 40% match and the limited percentage of funding that can go towards construction, we have our budget at 105 for that part of the project, which we would request a CCG grant for. So looking at the big picture, the issues addressed in phase 3 and 4 are the unsustainable infrastructure that we have, like the edge of the asphalt is unsupported and in poor condition and eroding down the hill, as you know, from meeting with us so many times, Abe. So this would be addressed, the lack of gutter at the base of the slope, which allows runoff onto the road, that would be addressed. Current street widths would be addressed in phase 2 and 3. Right now, lower Haro is 16.5 feet, and upper Haro is about 12 feet in width. And these would be addressed during phase 3 and 4 so that we could be under consideration for being accepted. The other part that's preventing us from being accepted is the dissecting portion of Haro, which is this crazy ramp that we have that's quite narrow. And in so much so that the garbage truck, fire trucks, emergency service trucks do not want to drive on it because of the liability, because there's, and the collapsing edge. So because of that, that's really part of the stage 3 and 4 that needs to be addressed because it's a public safety issue. as well as a major factor in preventing us from being accepted. So, and you know, it's scary. The people on Upper Haro have limited access to emergency services because the vehicles don't want to go up there. Recently, we had a situation where PG&E had to come out because the construction at the end of Haro, I think it's 1321, hit a gas main. And so that was really scary because the fire trucks could not get up there. So anyways, luckily it worked out, but still pretty scary. And that's something that we want to take into consideration in our plan. So this is sort of the master plan idea. This is the ramp currently, and instead it would go along here. It would extend the median out actually to Haro's, to 24th Street. And I know that one of our neighbors had expressed concerns that she'd be looking at roadway out her window instead of the slope that she currently looks at, the unplanted slope. But in actuality, because this median would be brought all the way to 24th Street, there would be quite a bit of green, trees, plants that could obscure the road. Anyways, those are all solvable problems in a plan that ultimately makes it safer and more beautiful for everybody. So stage 3 and 4, here's the other end of Haro towards 25th Street and what it would look like. You see the street is wider. The sidewalk is there. The drivable surface has to be 12 feet. And then the sidewalks have to be there in order for it to be accepted. So this is how we are suggesting solving this. So.
Could you go back one slide? I'm thinking of the left-hand side and that. So would that be a stop sign as you're coming down the hill to keep going? I guess that would be north.
Well, as it is right now, what's there? Is there a stop sign? I think there's a stop sign right now on right about here. Where is?
No, there's no stop.
That's on the south. It's only on the south side. Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, hi, David.
Hi, David.
Hi.
So I guess this is a stop sign, right? This red thing.
On the south side is a stop sign. Yeah, that would probably. Well, it's only one way, so the stop sign would probably be for the upper part.
Before the pedestrian walkway, before
Yeah,
that.
I would think. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere. I mean, we haven't asked. We haven't gotten into that much detail, I don't think.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Also,
So I would highlight and underscore that the accessibility to Star King open space is so much more just enhanced. Like currently, unless you're very fit, you cannot get to Star King from 24th Street.
you have to scale up rocks, literally,
Mhm.
in order to get up there.
So there's really,
My son
there's
does all the time.
Yeah, you have to be adolescent. Like it's scary.
Yeah. So it does create a much more beautiful entryway to Star King, both this footpath as well as the stairs. And we have, we work directly with the Star King Open Space Board of Directors, and they're in full support of this plan. So
That was going to be my question. Great.
Yeah, we have a letter of support from them that we're including in this packet. So again, this is the other side. The budget, the budget is a little more intimidating for us. So Terrains, when they proposed this, suggested looking into the mayor's grant, the watershed stewardship grant. That's a tongue twister. DPW, urban watershed grants, and public works. We have no idea how we're going to get to this phase and how we're going to fund it when we get there. And we know that there's going to be a lot of public notification and involvement before any of these phases can really happen. but we wanted to take them into consideration because we didn't want to do something in phase 1 that made it impossible to get to phase 3 or 4. So, you know, this is our proposal. So do you have any questions before we go on to some of the other diagrams?
Not yet. Just want to say this presentation is great. It's incredibly professional. I'm really happy about it.
Thank you. And what about, you know, I think we're asking you suggestions, you know, so we have this grand scheme. We'll get phase 1 and 2 done. Then we need Shaman's support, the Board of Supervisors support, the city support to do phase 3 and 4. So I think, you know, at some point we're going to need to know how to go about that.
Yeah, so this is just a photo analysis of Lower Haro and then a photo analysis of Upper Haro, just so that the committee has some idea of what we're talking about during the course of our project and why. Including the beautiful cobblestone streets on 24th and the rocky outcroppings of Star King. And this is this crazy path from 24th Street. It's really impossible for anybody over 20 or 30, anybody over 30 to go up this way.
It's a lot steeper than it looks in that picture.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, so this is just a topographical map to give you a little bit of reference of where we're at right now. I believe this is the current vehicular traffic. We have this one-way street now on Lower Haro, but a two-way street on Upper Haro, and the road is experiencing a huge increase in traffic, which it can't support because it's collapsing.
Traffic and erosion.
Wait, go back. Can you go back one moment? I just want to point out that, in fact, Lower Haro is not entirely one way. There is a point at which it's two-way, where that number 1, it's actually vehicles go 2 ways right there, which is right at that junction is a head-on just waiting to happen. It's, yeah. It's
crazy. Cars have to back up to the ramp in order to get, you know, past. And the ramp is experiencing a huge increase in traffic as well. And there's already broken pavement. It's getting worse quickly. And so we're really hoping to mitigate this somehow as soon as possible. So pedestrians can walk anywhere they want right now, except on the median, which is it's so ridiculous, which we are eager to also rectify. So the street width. San Francisco has a street width requirement of 20 feet for becoming an accepted street. As becoming accepted as part of our overall master project, each phase of our project takes this into account. So that's 20 feet breaks down to 8 feet of parallel parking and a 12-foot driving lane. So right now, Lower Haro, for the most part, is already 20 feet, except for this area beyond the ramp.
That's kind of how we're proposing Upper Haro to be one way. It's similar to how Carolina Street is now, one way in one direction and one way in the other direction. That way it keeps traffic flow going. So it's just very simple. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of explanation. I think you can see the arrows.
Yeah, it's very simple, but very complex in that it would require a pretty big retaining wall.
Well, it's gonna require us extending the street out.
Yeah.
You know, down to 24th Street. I mean, as that one diagram shows.
Yeah. I would emphasize that all of that land is DPW land. It is not Star King open space.
You're right. Where the road is going to go into is DPW land. You're correct.
Okay, so the wall height diagram is pretty interesting as well. It just shows, you know, how high does this gabion need to be in order to do its job. And so for stage one or phase one, the majority of what we're going to be building is in the 3.5 to 4.5 range. So it's an interesting diagram to study. So here we just, again, we have the overall master plan at the end of the day, or the end of the 10 years, or whatever it is. Or 20 years, or 5 years. Let's make it 5 years. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be great.
I like that.
Yeah.
Optimistic.
Yeah, with its various components highlighted here.
And do you all have senses of, for each phase, you know, assuming the money comes through, what the timeline of construction looks like?
No, we haven't gotten into that because I have personally no experience with city projects or construction projects on this kind of scale.
I would think by the time we get the money from the grant, the CCG grant, and then that would probably take, I would think, you know, if we can get started pretty quick after we get the money, I'd say 6 to 8 months, and then we're applying for the second grant. I would say, you know, if we have all of our ducks in a row and we get, you know, the permits in place that we need, a lot of it doesn't need permitted work because of the height of the gabion wall. So, I mean, you know, the nice thing is Terrain will work closely with us on keeping everything on course. They've been doing it on Carolina Street project. And I think Scott, when they came up with this conceptual master plan, just hit a home run. None of us even thought about this. And, you know, putting in the sidewalk on the upper part, just making it, I mean, we think it's stunning. And what do you think, Abe?
I love it. I, you know, am anticipating that this will take, you know, a bit of time to get to the very end of these 4 phases, but it'll be really exciting when we get there.
Right. Okay.
All right. So again, we reiterate the budgetary issues in our CCG grant because phase 1 and 2 are hopefully CCG funded, as well as the PUC water meter grant. So then stage 3 and 4, phase 3 and 4, of course, here it is again. And just our letters of support. Here's a letter of support from the Star King Open Space, a letter of support from the Friends of Jackson Park, and we have a lot of other letters of support coming, of course, from the Wildlife Center on the corner of 25th and Haro. So that's it. That's our presentation.